White Sox fans, welcome back to Sox On Tap. It's Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve. It's been a while, folks, since we've been on these airwaves. It's obviously been a rough go for the Chicago White Sox since we've last spoken. It was still rough then, but it's going to continue to get rough throughout the remainder of this regular season. Steve and I are here, and we're going to talk about a couple two-tree things going on in White Sox land. Before we do, Steven, how are you, my friend?
Anthony, I guess what I can say is much like the White Sox, I continue to exist. On the plus side, the death march that is the 2024 season will be over in 6 days.
6 more days, Steve. That's all we've got, and then we can put this team to rest, hopefully. Although they will live in the record books for the rest of your life. Yes, for the rest of our lives, and I really can't foresee another team being this bad. Crack them, Steve. Cheers. We'll drink it down. I've got your Coors here. I'm gonna have a couple two-tree Coors on this show. I can't foresee another baseball team ever reaching this loss mark. Can you? I can't fathom another team would do us a favor and take this record off of our shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, here is the sad reality of the situation here. When this week is over, they're going to have 124 or 125 losses on their record. And, 21 years ago, the Tigers set the American League record with 119 losses. I believe it was 6 years ago, the Baltimore Orioles lost 115 games. So, three really bad teams over the course of the last 20 years. You mix in, a couple of Astros teams that had back-to-back 110 loss seasons. But, at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to have a 5 or 6 game cushion on the next closest team. And it's almost unfathomable to think that you can lose 124 or 125 out of 162. And so I have a really hard time envisioning a team getting close to this, especially with the new anti-tanking rules that have been put in place when teams like the Orioles and the Astros were losing on purpose. This wasn't really done on purpose the last 2 years. And the hardest thing about this entire ordeal that we as a fan base collectively are having to go through right now is, like you said, we're probably going to have to live with this for the rest of our lives. And so many of us, and I don't know about if it's the same for you. I know we kind of had a little bit of discussion about this yesterday, but for better or worse, a lot of people identify me with this fucking baseball team for some reason.
Well, you're on a show and talk about them. You write about them. You go to all these games.
Yeah, but I mean,
obviously, but it's a part of your identity.
I mean, it has become that in a lot of ways, but it's bad when, I have doctors that I work with trolling me. My bosses out on the East Coast sending me memes, trolling me, sending me Onion articles, making fun of this team.
The Babylon Bee was jumping on board today. Did you see that one?
Yeah. I mean that one was actually kind of funny though, because I was told that the Bears were going to save Chicago sports.
I had to bring.
How's that working out?
Had to bring that one up.
Yeah. But no, I mean that's not why you called. But like I said, at the end of the day, and I had a discussion with my parents the last time I was over there because my mother brought this up, and I told her I didn't want to talk about it, and I got a little heated, and I said that talking about this and thinking about this just fucking sucks, every aspect of it, because I'm going to be hearing about this, and I am unfortunately going to be associated with being a fan of the worst team in baseball history until I'm in the fucking ground. So every day for the rest of my life, this is something that is going to be in the back of my mind, and fans of certain teams are going to be bringing this up nonstop now.
I'm sure a man named Ted up in Minnesota will be thrilled once the White Sox.
But it's not just him, and I mean we know we're gonna have to hear about this shit locally from people every day. It's not going to stop. So, got anywhere from, I mean, some of us might have 50 or 60 years left, who knows? But we're gonna have to live with this every fucking day for the rest of our lives, and it is just a fucking miserable thing to think about.
It is. It is really miserable to think about. I saw AJ Pierzynski throw out a post on X asking fans how they felt about this yesterday and what their thought process was. You jump on board and cheer the record. It's historic. Are you embarrassed by this? What are your thoughts on it? And there was a wide range of different perspectives that were out there, but the resounding one was that fans of this team right now are embarrassed. It is embarrassing. You and I had the discussion yesterday as well as to whether or not you were going to be in attendance tomorrow at the ballpark. I know you would bowed out of that one. I myself, I'm going to go to this game. There's part of it for me. I kind of need to see this happen to really, soak it in. It's going to make the next fluke playoff appearance that much better. I was speaking with our guy Besnick yesterday, Mr. Sox Insane, and I believe he's going to be in attendance as well, Steven. And he sort of shares that sentiment there. It's not fun though. Like, this isn't something that I enjoy. However, it is interesting that we're here and how we got there. And I know a lot of people have said, this needs to be studied. I think you and I did a pretty good job of going through that. If you haven't checked it out, and this is a shameless plug, go check out what we did last offseason.
We studied this 10 months ago.
Yeah, we did this interview series over the offseason, rebuilt. It's on our YouTube, On Tap Sportsnet. Go check that out. I know Sox Insane threw a thread of all the episodes up there as well on X. You can find them there at Sox Insane. He's got a nice thread of them. But in reality, man, I don't know what your prediction was at the beginning of the season. I probably thought it was too pessimistic, as I always think your predictions are. But I want to revisit that right now.
Yeah.
Where were you with this team at the start of the 2024 season?
Okay, so when I got out to Arizona for spring training in mid-March, I was telling everybody within the group here, I was saying 115 losses. And so many people, and the Vegas projections somehow had this team at 66.5 wins, and it never made sense to me. So I was saying 115 losses. But then I got out there to Arizona, and I don't know if it was just the feel-good nature of being at the ballpark and seeing things. My prediction article, I had them at 105. So I somehow talked myself into giving them an extra 10 wins. Again, I looking back at it in retrospect, I don't know why, but something I just said, okay, they'll lose 105.
Air was clear. It was a nice, warm day out there in Arizona, and you decided to give the White Sox 10 extra wins. It's easy to do. Yeah. That's amazing to me that you were on 115.
And people told me
this is within the margin of error, though. You sort of predicted this.
And people told me I was fucking nuts. Everyone's like, "Oh, there's no way they're going to be this bad. There's no way they can possibly be that bad. The defense is going to be better." And they got rid of all these bad, pieces that they had, And I looked at this, I'm like, where are the runs coming from? And
the offense has been absolutely putrid all season.
It's historically bad.
Well, that's something that we talked about a lot last offseason when, you had the departures that you did over at the trade deadline last year and then into the offseason. It's interesting to think that there were people who thought that they would wind up better than they were in 2023. I thought that this was going to be a bad year. I thought it was going to be around the 100-105 loss mark myself. That being said, we watched what can happen when things spiral out of control, and spiral out of control they have over the last month and a half here too. You said this to me yesterday. The White Sox seemingly find ways to get national media attention for all of the wrong reasons. And here we are. This week has been arguably the worst press the White Sox have ever gotten tonight. I'll start with the Stephen King thing. Posting the tweet about how it can't get any worse. If there's one thing that we know on this show and have proven time and time again, the Chicago White Sox organization can find a way to make it worse. That leaves me with a eerie feeling about how much worse it can get next season. Like, the only team that I think can beat the Chicago White Sox loss record, whatever we wind up at, could be the 2025 Chicago White Sox. That's I think the only team out there that can do it. Yeah, it's not good, man. What are your thoughts on some of this national media attention that's been coming out about this team?
It is a really scary proposition to think about a team having consecutive 120 loss seasons. I mean, again, that is just so.
How is it getting fixed this offseason?
I mean, we already had a couple. What was it 10 days ago? We had Chris Getz in the booth, basically saying, "Yeah, we're not really going to be players in free agency." I mean, they've got about $50 million. Because we know Moncada's option is going to get declined. They've got about $50 million in commitments. At the end of the day, and
you're probably going to be without Garrett Crochet.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be without Luis Robert.
I disagree on that. Just because.
Although we did have a conversation about his market and what that would take to trade him right now. I don't think you're going to get a good return.
No, you won't. You won't. You're going to need him to have 3 good months to start the 2025 season. Like, that is going to be essential for him. And I know a couple months ago I wrote the article, where people were already clamoring to trade him, and I said, you've got a year and a half to fix this thing to be in position for 2026 and 2027 to try to make 2 playoff runs with him. Well, that shit's out the window now. Like, it's flat out the window here. So now you're in a position where you need him to have 3 good months so that you can try to extract some type of trade value for him. And that's not a position you want to be in. I don't see how this thing gets fixed quickly. The free agent class sucks this winter. Chris Getz did not inspire a lot of confidence in his ability to identify people at the bottom tier of the free agent market. I know Eric Fetty was a solid signing out of Korea. That worked pretty well, but by and large, his scrap heap decisions were just as bad as Rick Hahn's. And, you look at and you think about some of the guys that were in this bullpen that, has been one of the weakest links of this team with all the leads that they've blown late. Look at what Declan Cronin is doing down in Miami for the Marlins. Look at what Jersimer Cousins is doing for the Yankees. Look what Tim Hill has been doing for the Yankees since he got over there. It's just so many of Getz's decisions.
Some White Sox legends.
Yeah, and then you bring in the little slapdicks from Atlanta that all were atrocious. And I mean, Jared Schuster has been he's been fine as a left-handed low leverage reliever, but I mean, that's not gonna tilt the scales for you in a significant way. So it's like all these decisions that were made. And I mean, Dominic Fletcher, your Philip Paisan, really good defensively, but I mean, he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a fucking boat. Let's be real here. I mean,
it's continuous scrap heap projects that we continue to employ here at 35th and Shields on the baseball side of things. But where does it get better? I saw a comment in here from Saxon saying the hype line to 35th will save us. Prospect wise, there's some stuff on the pitching side. There's going to need to be deals made. And if there's one thing that I've learned about Chris Getz so far, it's that he doesn't really make some great decisions when it comes to trades, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I know I certainly would much rather have Connor Norby and the 7 home runs and 800 OPS he's put up with the Miami Marlins over Miguel Vargas. Despite, who hit a home
deep
run
yesterday.
Yeah, cool. He's still got an OPS like below 400 with the Sox. So,
yeah.
I mean,
he loves being here too.
Yeah. Well, maybe have some better at bats and then quit the fucking pouting, because you're a big part of the fucking problem here.
It's amazing to me that, and we'll get into this for a second here. It's amazing to me that Grady Sizemore made the comments about wanting to get more playing time for Vargas and for Ramos at third base. And obviously, Yohan Moncada's not going to be here next season. Not for that dollar amount. That is like Jerry's wet dream is declining that option. So he can put that money back into his pocket. That said, I don't think Yohan Moncada gets that option picked up by any organization in baseball next season. However, there's a sector of the fan base that believes that Moncada, even though since he's been reinstated, should be getting some playing time right now. I don't know if I really agree with that. I think you sort of lay in the bed that you made during your time here, but I did want to dig in on this Yohan Moncada situation too. What your thoughts are on it. And if you have anything to say about the Yohan Moncada era that's going to be quickly coming to a close here. I wonder if he's going to get a start over this next series here. I think it's kind of highly doubtful that he does. It really, to me, seems like they're somewhat punishing him for lack of a better term. I don't know if there was any discrepancies within the organization, but the Yohan Moncada experience is quickly coming to an end here. This was a guy that packed the ballpark when he was called up for the Chicago White Sox, was labeled a phenom, is going to have probably a semi-difficult time finding a job next season with all of the injury history and everything. I still think that there's some promise there, but he's getting a little older. Just give me your thoughts on the end of Yohan Moncada's tenure with the Chicago White Sox.
I'm going to have some pretty expansive thoughts on this thing once the season concludes. But, just 10,000 foot view of this here. Just an absolute disappointment. You traded a guy that is going to win the Cy Young this year in Chris Sale. He's going to do it for my Barbs. And Moncada was supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be the centerpiece and the foundation of the next really good era of White Sox baseball. And he absolutely did not live up to that. I think at this point here, it is safe to say that this was just it was a failure. It really was. The 2019 super bouncy ball year was the obvious outlier. I had concerns about that when they gave him the extension going into 2020, and it proved to be right, unfortunately. He never came close to equaling the power output that he put up that year, and it's pretty clear as to why. There were periods of time where he would put up solid on-base numbers, but the slug just wasn't there. He would give you, I would say, above average defense there, but you wouldn't see him on the field enough. And the last 2 years, you barely saw him at all. So it's just hard to label this era as anything but an abject failure. I'm sorry. And I know a lot of people will point to the WAR number from 2019 through 2021. I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it for me. And just so disappointing. I don't know if there's one other word that really can be used to summarize his tenure here, because he was supposed to be the guy. Like you said, he was the number one rated prospect in all of Major League Baseball. And he did not deliver like a number one prospect should.
Not in the slightest. I will always have the memories of the walk. And like, I can't really think of many other good Yoan Moncada moments.
There was the
Houston walk-off.
There was the Houston walk-off in 2017 when he had a home run to tie it and then had a base hit to win it. And then there was a game in 2019 when he hit a ninth inning home run against the Tigers to tie the game. And but I mean, other than that, you really didn't have those big moments.
That's what sort of bothered me about Yoan Moncada, was for a guy that was labeled the phenom, it just never seemed like he came through in those moments that you'd want a star player to come through in. And I know Voodoo's in our Matt Redacted Moncada All-Star starter in 2025. Crazier things have happened. You know, maybe he goes to Houston or something. I don't know. And winds up, you know, making a position change over to second base, which he played before, that gets him onto a different squad. I don't know what's going to happen with Yoan Moncada. It would be so White Sox, though, Steve. Would it not be so White Sox if Yoan Moncada went out next season and was an all-star? I can imagine a world where that happens for some odd reason, just because it's the White Sox.
I know we are conditioned as Sox fans to expect something like that to happen because we anticipate bad things happening to guys in White Sox uniforms, and then immediately when they leave, that bad juju leaves. I just don't see it. I'm old enough to remember a couple months ago when Eloy Jimenez got off to a great 5-game start for the Baltimore Orioles. I don't know if anybody's checked in on him since then. Take a look, though, and get back to me on if the White Sox stink is off of Eloy Jimenez.
I think they permanently may have ruined him. They permanently may have ruined Yoan Moncada too. Who knows? On that note, though, I think the reason we're conditioned to think this way is largely due in part to these national stories that are coming out on the Chicago White Sox. And I want to dissect some of these, and I don't even know where to start. There's a plethora of them that are out there. But maybe we'll just start with the big one, the one that came out from The Athletic. My initial thought on this, Steve, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's a couple of little tidbits in there that I felt I learned, but a lot of this wasn't news to me. It didn't feel like news. It felt like a little more validation than news. We've heard the rumblings of stuff about how the Chicago White Sox operate. We watch the product with our own eyes, almost to our own detriment. And when I hear some of these things, we knew about the plane. The plane was out in the internets a while back. The players' comments on the planes are kind of hilarious, but I didn't feel like I learned anything new about the Chicago White Sox that was ultra shocking. However, if I wasn't a Chicago White Sox fan and I was, just getting the news coming in every day about how bad the White Sox are, and I read this, it was probably eye-opening for a large segment of baseball fans. And, this is why we talk about, we don't want to be here right now. The spotlight is firmly on the Sox, and that report that comes out it did not make us look good at all in any way, shape, or form. Steve, I need your reactions.
So my thoughts are this. we talk all the time about how this team is ignored nationally. And these pieces are really an example of that national ignorance. Those of us that are here, that follow this team every day, that produce content about this team, that have sources, like you said, these are things that were all very well known to us. And now it's just like the national media is like, oh my God, what a dysfunctional ass backwards organization that's still in the Stone Age. How could this possibly be? And we're left sitting here like, hey, dumbass, we've been telling you this for years. You just chose not to pay attention to it. And now it takes historic futility for this to come to the light for the rest of the baseball world. Things that we have known, things that we have talked about for years and years and years. I was joking about this on X. It's like all these people are like, oh my God, who could have possibly known that a guy that was one of the single-handed biggest reasons why his best team he ever had got a World Series taken away from him. Who could have possibly seen that he was a flaming shitbag? Who could have known that Jerry Reinsdorf was this awful and this ass backwards in the way that he runs his team? Who could have seen this coming? But we've all known this. So for us, like you said, in a lot of ways, it was validation. What I think, though, is in a lot of ways that these stories coming out, I think it's good in one sense that the son of Satan, Jerry Reinsdorf, has become Teflon to the local Chicago media because, again, they still don't pay as much attention to the Sox locally as they do, and especially now that it's Super Bowl season, we got to get all hyped up for a team that's going to win 7 games, and hasn't won a playoff game in 13 or 14 years that our guy Sox Insane tweeted about this morning here. But we got to blow our load over that. But it's like Reinsdorf, he's become Teflon to these people, and the beat writers are afraid to talk about this stuff. They know this stuff is going on. Like, there's a lot of back channel things that I've seen with my own eyes. Some of the people that are around this team, they say, oh yeah, we've known about that. Well, then why don't you say anything? Because they don't want to have their access cut off. At the end of the day, that's the fucking game that is played here locally. So the local people don't want to talk about it. That's why the independent content producers like us, like all the other Sox blogs that are out there, and it's talked about all the time, the independent people that produce content around this team do a better job than anybody nationally and any of the paid beat writers, because we're not beholden to protecting Jerry Reinsdorf for access. I'll tell Jerry Reinsdorf he's a piece of shit because I have nothing to lose. I have a fucking job that I go to every day that pays my fucking for everything I do. Like, I'm not dependent on Jerry Reinsdorf's access to survive and make a living. So I'll tell him he's a fucking piece of shit every fucking day for the rest of my life. I don't care.
So are you in favor of these stories coming out then, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
My greater point to this was the only thing he has seemed to respond to in recent years is when he gets his name dragged through the mud nationally, when you have a bigger audience to it. I go back to this all the time. Think about the fact that he issued a statement after remember that final segment of The Last Dance where Michael Jordan buried him for breaking up that team. And he issued a statement because he knew how bad he looked. He knew the eyeballs that were on that documentary during the pandemic, and there was nothing else going on. He knew how bad that was. And that anytime somebody nationally says something bad about him, That's the only time he comes out of his cave to make a statement. And
it's interesting that he was trying to get ahead of it a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago with the statement that he issued, and I'm sure they knew stuff was coming.
And I have heard there's going to be more stuff coming this week. So this isn't over. These national pieces, they're not done. There's more coming. It's just a matter of when. And, you know, you think about the day that the article from The Athletic came out. Our friend of the show, White Sox David, got a little scoop from somebody on the inside saying that Jerry called a meeting of front office people to talk about this, about what was out there. And then now you think about all the things that have happened and come out since then. You have the former agent coming out telling the Eddie Goodell story. And for those of you that haven't heard it yet, just go to the Google machine, type in Jerry Reinsdorf, Eddie Goodell, and be prepared to be mind blown by it. And I'll tell you this much. I 100% believe that motherfucker said what was in that video. 100% believe it. And then you get an article from a former player, Jake Peavy, just a couple days ago. So these things aren't stopping. You think about the comments that Tommy Pham made during that piece in The Athletic. Those are things that he told me to my face in late July when I had a 30-minute conversation with him in the West Loop before he got traded. And he just repeated all of that. And now it's out there for everyone in the baseball world to see how ass backwards this organization operates. That, to me, could be the only positive that comes out of this because, again, he's not going to be embarrassed. He's not going to be upset about being shamed locally because he doesn't care about us. The meme that goes around of Jerry Reinsdorf saying there, fuck White Sox fans, I legitimately think that's how he feels about us. I really do. And the people that, you know, cover this team, I really think he feels that way about us. But when it's coming from New York, you know, when Christopher Mad Dog Russo is even making comments about him on his show, when he never talks about the White Sox, that says a lot. And I think that has more power to it than, you know, me and my daily fuck you, Jerry Reinsdorf tweet.
I gave you the soapbox. You ran with it there, my friend. That was probably that was a lot of fire and passion coming from you. There was a lot of passion there, Steve. I appreciate the passion. I know it's a tradition for you to say what you feel about Jerry Reinsdorf on this.
It's a tradition like no other.
But the passion here backed up the traditions. That was excellent. You know, I don't want to spend too much time on the Goodell story. People can go find that at their leisure. I will say this: I don't know too much about the guy that made that video. I haven't put a lot of stock into it. It seems like it was a joke that didn't land very well, and Jerry seems like he's not so good at humor. That was my take from that.
Well, we've seen that. You know, was it a year ago at whatever philanthropic event that he was getting an award at? He's like, oh well, you know, we don't give our fans enough wins.
Yeah, it's just bad humor. You know, and I kind of put that in the same bucket as the you know, always finish second and dangle the carrot type statement. I don't know the full context of that one off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure everybody who's listening to this understands that statement and where it came from. There's just a pile of evidence that points in the wrong direction when it comes to Jerry Reinsdorf and any of the business practices. I will say this. I was having a discussion again with our guy Sox Insane. There was a tidbit that came out that while they're not going to spend in free agency, they're finally taking the time to look at their systems and their analytics and all of that stuff. I think that's a good move if you're not going to spend in free agency. Here's my problem with it, though. You know, I work in technology. There's a lot of times where a company can look at what they have in place and end up making things worse because they don't understand what it is that they're putting in place. And we don't know exactly, like, I know now I guess there's like a Marine walking around in the building. It's like a scene of The Office. It really is. Remember when they tried to replace Michael Scott and they bring the Marine in? That's sort of what the vibe that I'm getting here. It doesn't
Gibbons.
it doesn't make it better just because somebody else comes in with an outside perspective if they don't understand what it is that they're actually doing. There's a new scouting director that came into the organization. You're seeing all of these moving parts that are sort of vastly underreported, at least in my perspective. Yes, that you get the name out there. What are they doing? Who knows? We're going to spend money on systems and upgrade analytics and all this stuff. This all started moving around the same time these reports started coming out about, well, we're telling pitchers they need to work on their command without any thought process behind what's wrong. Your sinker's going to play here. That was the most damning evidence in that report, from my perspective, that says they don't understand what's going on. What I can't fathom is how the hell Ethan Katz, and maybe the New York Times article didn't lay this out in a good chronological order, because you even had the 108 throw something out there that labeled Ethan Katz a hero in that article. If pitchers are reporting that they're getting bad analytics and all of this other stuff, and I'm sure that Brian Bannister has hopefully helped nip some of those problems in the bud, and they're being proactive with this. But the timing of this and the sequencing in this article didn't really lend any credence to, at least for me, Ethan Katz's job over the last 4 years or how long has he been here now? It's almost 5, right? Over that period of time, I would think that, some of these statements were made about what's going on there. And unless Ethan Katz is, actually the hero here and people are backing up, his work, it doesn't matter if you have the analytical guy there if the message isn't reaching the people that it needs to in the right way. And so when I take this back to the system, you can spend all the money that you want on new software, new data analytics, bring in new consulting firms, anything that you want to do. But if the message isn't relayed through the organization the right way down to the people that it needs to get relayed to, and isn't clear enough for them to understand it, no new system's going to save this thing.
So lot to unpack there. As it relates to this new director of culture, I don't even remember what his name is at this point here.
Head of the party planning committee?
Might as well be. I don't know when there's going to be a party anytime soon. It's 35th and Shields, but that's nevertheless.
Ask me after the parade, please.
Yeah. Okay. My thoughts are this. If his idea is to come in here and to look at every department with the goal and the premise of, I don't know, I don't have the answers to these. I need to find the people that do have the answers. I need to talk to people in and around the game. Once I understand how deep this issue goes, I need to have people that I can talk to in and around the game through various organizations here, and bring in the right people and say, I'm installing you into this role. This is the problem. I am bringing you here to fix it. I trust that you are the one that will know how to fix it. So I'm going to give you what you need to do that. If that is what we're trying to accomplish here, then that's a good thing. Some self-reflection here on the state of this organization and just the foundational issues that have been present for a really long time and have been really present to all of us watching this thing for so long here. If that's what the goal is here, is to bring in people that have core competency in these areas to fix them. If the idea of bringing in the new international scouting director from the New York Mets is to say, hey, we know Marco Patti didn't do a good job. The international, the Latin American market is a fucking disaster right now. Fix it. Let us know what you need to do, what resources you need to fix this. Then that's a good thing. I have concerns that the guy in charge won't allow people to have all the resources that they need to ultimately fix these problems on a fundamental level, because he hasn't shown a willingness to do that. But if somehow, if this guy, and again, I don't remember his name off the top of my head here, if him and Chris Getz can finally get through to this 88-year-old,
isn't it Mahler?
Yeah, yes, thank you. So if Mahler and Getz can finally get through to this 88-year-old fuckhead who still thinks it's the same game that it was in 1981 when he got the team from Bill Vac, then that's a good thing. But the jury is still out on that. And I am going to remain skeptical that is going to happen, because I have not seen any willingness from Jerry Reinsdorf to adapt over the course of the last 40 years. So until I see that, I'm not going to believe it. And that sucks to say, but that's just kind of where we're at.
I'm sort of right there with you when it comes to this, because you talk about putting people in the right positions and going to find who has the answers here. I don't know if this organization has a lot of guys that have the answer to the problem without cross-checking that back with the man in charge himself, based upon the evidence that's been laid out here through multiple national media stories, things that we've heard through, rumor mills and back channels and all the other stuff. If it was going to get fixed, it probably would have been already.
See, I disagree with that, because they were just treading water. They didn't sink to this level.
They didn't anticipate to sink to this level.
Right. They thought that they were just going to keep treading water, but
that's not what was marketed to the fans, though.
But we knew that it was bullshit.
With Rebuild 2.0? Did we know it was bullshit, or
did
we buy into the hype? I mean, I bought into the hype.
No, I'm talking about, this past winter when we were told, when Chris Getz was saying this isn't a rebuild, and Jerry hiring Getz and saying that.
That was another PR disaster. But
yeah, that's more so what I was referring to there.
I'm looking at a little larger scale and saying, like, okay, these are things that should have been in place when you went through Rebuild 2.0 to make sure that you didn't wind up in this position. And hell, man, it probably should have been done before Rebuild 2.0 in the first all-in era time.
And
you got guys from that era, Jake Peavy, coming out in national articles as well, saying that things were dysfunctional then. Mm-hmm. It's still the exact same place as it was when he left.
I remember, texting you and Jonathan a couple of weeks ago saying what a different world it could have been if, when the decision was made to do Rebuild 2.0, if they would have fired Rick and Kenny and hired Alex Anthopoulos. Instead, Anthopoulos went to my Barbs, and then they have 6 division titles and a World Series since then. Because he's a guy that he got there under some really bad circumstances, with their previous GM being banned from the game for life for a bonus skimming scandal in Latin America. So Some bad shit was going on there in Atlanta, and Anthopoulos came in there in some bad conditions, and he has turned them back into a perennial contender. And he has consistently found a way to keep adding to that team. And that was after he did a pretty good job of turning around the Toronto Blue Jays. Like he was right there. He was an assistant with the Dodgers. Any team could have hired him to run their baseball operations.
But you had Rick and Kenny.
And I'm aware.
That's the Jerry Reinsdorf answer. That's why Chris Getz is here.
I know.
You can bring in all the people you want. Does it change the fact that Chris Getz might not have been the best man to hire for that job?
Might not.
How long does it take to realize that?
I mean, we knew it within 4 minutes.
Okay, we're sitting here at the end of the 2024 season, staring down baseball history, and there's going to be no accountability for it. It really won't. What Marco Patti was the accountability fall guy? Pedro Grifol? The issues are deeper than that.
Well, that's why,
what's the leash going to be? Like, after you've GM'd the worst team in baseball history, how long of a leash do you get? Because you can't, like, logically speaking, as Chris Getz, you can't walk in there and say, yeah, we knew this year was going to be bad. Pull the tapes.
Well, wait, you mean when he lied? When he lied to us?
Yes.
And said that this wasn't going to be that bad, and then was it 10 days ago said, if you would have told me we were going to lose 105 or 110 games, I would have believed that, but 120, I would have never believed that. That's not this shining statement that you think it is there, Getsy.
No,
saying that you would have been okay with losing 105 or 110.
My favorite one is the I don't like our team, and then this year's version is worse.
Infinitely.
So I'd like to know if he likes the team now.
Yeah.
That'd be a great question for a White Sox beat writer to ask at the end of the season or at the winter meetings if he likes the team. I know he was cheered a little bit for getting rid of guys that could potentially have been clubhouse issues. Maybe we were talking about this last year, that they're not a real family and that, they've got all these issues, and there was all the talk about Tim Anderson's off the field stuff. And I think a lot of people assumed, including myself, if you read between the lines that, there were things that they wanted to clean up in the clubhouse to get, a little more cohesive group together. The problem is that they don't have the talent. They might be the most cohesive group of humans ever assembled on Earth, but that doesn't mean that they're good at baseball.
I'm so tired of, and there's, beat writers that I see talking about, oh, this is such a great clubhouse. They're really together. You know what? I don't give a flying fuck if they sit around in the clubhouse singing lullabies to each other. Give me some motherfuckers that can get on base and hit home runs.
This is stuff that you hear Ozzie Guillen say on the post-game shows. This was so much more enjoyable when we got to sit here and talk about ball go far, team go far. This team has it, all of the fun stuff. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in tonight and joined us on this White Sox therapy session. It almost feels like at this point in time, because we haven't recorded a show in a month. There's a reason for that. But I just want to be honest with everyone. Like, this drives me up the fucking wall thinking about how bad this team is. And I want to get back to doing this show way more often and not have to just drill down into all of the aspects of the Chicago White Sox that are broken every single time we get on this show, because that's what it's turned into. Watching a baseball game that doesn't involve the Chicago White Sox is, I think everybody should do it. If you're just a White Sox fan, like go watch just two teams that are not the Chicago White Sox. And Steve, you do this all the time. It's a different game.
Yeah.
It's a different game. Breaking these games down and looking at there's a reason why we say that's so White Sox, because no other team does this type of shit. It's on the field, it's off the field. They're in the national media for all the wrong reasons, as we said before. Apologies to everyone for the lack of shows, but we shouldn't be doing this over and over again. And this is how we're going to spend our winter, is looking through all of the different avenues and trying to find some light through the forest that we're in right now, it seems damn near impossible. But I would like to get to a point. I don't even care if it's 500 fucking baseball, but things are looking in the right direction, and it looks like there's a plan, and you're not being fucking lied to by your GM or the owner or anybody else who's involved in it. It's really tiring. It takes a lot out of you. We've had guys on the Cubs side, on our White Sox side, do podcasts for the last 5 years, and some years we've done almost daily shows. And I never would have imagined that we would have gotten to the point that we are right now with this, because it is very difficult to sit here and find positive things to talk about with this organization. Obviously, this is hopefully rock bottom, but as I said before, man, it just always feels like it can get worse.
Anthony, think about this. 3 years ago, at this very moment, I was drunk off my ass in a fucking hotel in Cleveland because I got my ass up and on the road at 5:30 in the morning and drove 4 fucking hours.
Saw you on TV.
To the Mistake by the Lake to watch the burial of a fucking division rival. The fucking Indians franchise died that day, and I was fucking there for it. It was 3 years ago today. Literally, it has been all fucking downhill since that fucking day. And it makes me fucking sick to my stomach. I remember you talked about it because we had all 4 of us on a show that night, and I'm pounding tall boys in the fucking hotel by my fucking self after I'd been drinking for 10 fucking hours in the ballpark there. And you fucking made the joke that you've never seen me that drunk on a fucking show before.
It was glorious.
It was fucking phenomenal. And to think in 3 years' time, we would sink to the depths of the abyss that we are in right now. If you would have told me when I was sitting in that fucking hotel room in Cleveland that we would be having this conversation 3 years to the day, I would have said, you're out of your fucking mind. Whatever pills you're taking or whatever else you're on, send them my way here because I want to get in on some of that.
You wanted to get in on the misery?
No, I mean, the delusion.
The delusion, yeah. I mean, it is truly incredible. It's the most fascinating part is what could have been. And I think for the rest of my life, I'll always wonder, what would have happened if things had panned out with Rebuild 2.0, because that was before things got bad, that was a fun baseball team. It was. And I still have plenty of plaques up in my basement, no hitters and Field of Dreams moments and all these things. And the thought came to me that, yeah, I mean, hey, there it is. That's dirt from the Field of Dreams, from Field of Dreams Day. That was a fantastic evening. And I even brought this up to you when you said the White Sox never get any, good media attention. They did for one day when they beat the Yankees. I found a video yesterday of White Sox Dave calling out a bunch of Barstool Yankees fans, just swearing at him, telling them the White Sox are coming. That was not too long ago. And here, this fell off the track so fast and so hard. I don't know if there's any other franchise in sports history that's fallen like this. There probably has been. But to see where we are right now, and as Sox and Saints says, we are down So fucking bad. We are down. We're down. You should be down if you're a White Sox fan right now, because it's embarrassing to get just sort of dragged through the mud when your GM and owner made a new GM hire, and they both come out and say this is going to be a quick turnaround. Who
straight up lied?
Who is coming here to fix this? Neither of them are doing what needs to be done, and they can scream it from the mountaintops. Spend money, bring in talent. What free agent? And Sox and Saints said this in the comments just a few minutes ago, but I share this sentiment. Who wants to come here? You said yesterday you thought that the Sox suck tax on bringing anyone in is going to be around 45%. That's just a guesstimate. We don't know. Obviously, there's players out there that are going to need to sign deals. I mean, look at Paul Young earlier this season, reclaiming, a spot and then winds up going to a team that he can go play in the playoffs with. There's Tommy Phams out there that are going to need to sign deals. That's not long-term talent, though. None of the moves that have been made outside of drafting have been any sort of attempt to set this team up for long-term success.
Think about this. That 2003 Tigers team that lost 119 games. That winter, they had, I think it was maybe at some point during that season, they had hired Dave Dombrowski to oversee their turnaround. Okay. So they set the American League record for most losses in a season. What was the first thing Dave Dombrowski did? He went out and he signed Ivan Rodriguez, who had just won a fucking World Series with the Florida Marlins. He said, I'm fucking bringing in top shelf talent right now. Yeah, we know it's a couple years away, but this way, when this thing turns, because we believe our farm system is turning, when this turns, we have a star here ready to fucking go, ready to lead the way, someone that has won. Anybody think that's going to happen?
I can't think of anybody on the Chicago White Sox that fits that bill right now.
But I mean, think about it. Is there anybody in that free? Is there anybody in that free agent market that you would think, hey, do the same thing here? Bring in a star. Send a fucking message.
Instead, they tell you we're not going to do that. We're not going to do it. We don't want it. We don't want it. We're going to run it back.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. Here we are.
There's no statement signing. There's no. You got to give people a reason to feel good about something.
What a boat ride to a makeshift baseball diamond doesn't do that?
I wasn't on the boat. If I was on the boat, maybe I'd feel a little bit better about it. But I think you need to have
apparently the people that were
account than I do to get on that boat.
Apparently, the people that were on the boat weren't overly impressed though with what they saw or what they heard.
Yeah, that's not my problem. It could be very well soon. We're gonna save this talk. I mean, we've been doing this for an hour, but I think we should. You and I had a great conversation on the phone yesterday, and maybe we'll tease it. We'll do this in another episode. But just the 5-year outlook is not good for the Chicago White Sox when it comes to a lot of off the field logistics, and it's something that worries me as a fan of this team. That there's ways that this can go awry, and I really don't like the public sentiment of telling Jerry Reinsdorf to go away, because I firmly believe that he just might, and then you don't have a baseball team here to root for. Not that the one that we have is very good right now, but for better or for worse, and I think you would share in this sentiment with me that being a White Sox fan is part of my life. And I don't want to lose that, but I think we should do an episode just on, what the thought process is going into this. And I know that boat ride didn't really go too well, and I can't imagine that they're first in line over the bear down Chicago Bears to get any taxpayer dollars that are going to fund a new stadium. But it could get a little sticky, especially with the state of this franchise. I'll leave it at that, Steve. You got anything else, man?
No, I just honestly, I can't wait for it to be over, and I'm dreading what is going to happen tomorrow. I've been dreading this for weeks, and it's going to suck. And the worst part about it is that the one person that should care the most about this really doesn't. The fact that it bothers you and me more than it does him, it says a lot about how we got to this position here. And the fact that we, as people that really give a shit about this team each and every day, like I talked about in the open, we have to carry this with us every day now till we're in the fucking dirt. And it fucking sucks.
That's so White Sox. That's so White Sox. Thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight for Sox on Tap as we discuss the worst team in baseball history. We'll be back with a season-ending wrap-up show sometime in the next week here. And that'll be it for a little while. White Sox. I'm also very happy that this is over in just about a week. Thank you to everybody who tuned in throughout the season. Reads our coverage over at ontapsportsnet.com. It's almost hockey time, Steve.
Connor Bedard is our only hope.
Connor Bedard is our only hope. That's it. That's all we've got for today. For better or for worse, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.